I'm gonna jump around, and I apologize. This will not I mean, I do
You
have
re
structured
you
questions
really
here,
should
but
apologize because the jumping around is very confusing to me, Jim.
what was the date of your first audition for SNL?
Well, I got
Eight
on the show in the fall of '98,
right.
so I guess it would have been February, March, April, I'm guessing. I
And
don't
was that while you were in the main company? Did that one segue into the other? Is that how that connection happened?
Yeah, 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 they had sent out talent scouts, and they had asked for tape, from my agent one time prior. It was the round when they hired Anna, and, I knew that that was happening and tape was getting sent in, and then I didn't get it, and I just thought, "Oh, well, that was my SNL shot." Hopefully I'll keep getting to do sitcoms.
Exploring life's journey, one story at a time. This is Trailheads with Jim Barrett. Well, you know him as star of Saturday Night Live, 30 Rock, Archer, Rick and Morty, and so many other productions. I know him as my original Memphis homie and one of my very best friends. Today I'm talking with Chris Parnell.
Welcome to Trailheads. I'm Jim Barrett, and I'm here today with my longtime friend, Chris Parnell. As many people know, Saturday Night Live's Chris Parnell, as well as many other projects that we'll talk about. But thank you for joining me today, my friend.
Of course, thanks for having me, man.
Hiking always has connected me in a way to battle that anxiety and to just sort of keep me in check. And some of the other people who I've hiked with over the years have said similar things. And I know you've been running for quite a while now. What is that like for you? What does running do for you?
Well, it's the one thing that I do to try to stay healthy. I mean, I do a little bit of dumbbells and some, planks and stuff like that after I run. I mean, for me, I feel like I've got to do something, at 58. I want to keep trying to run for as long as possible and remain injury free, hopefully. And, just as a way to stay healthy overall.
And I noticed that on some of your social media, you've done like official sort of check-ins with how, talking about your own personal goals. How's that going?
I have haven't done a running report in quite a while now. I probably should. Part of it is vanity, Jim, because at the end of a run, I don't look great, and sometimes I don't care, but sometimes I do. And I'll shoot a little running report sometimes on the iPhone, and then I look at it on my computer screen. It's like, oh, I got snot coming out my nose and spittle at the corner of my lips, and it's just like, man, I don't want to put that out into the world.
You and I went to the same high school, Germantown, which
Mhm.
is a township just outside of Memphis, Tennessee, for those who don't know. And we both had the benefit of the same mentor, a former teacher of ours named Frank Bluestein. And I think that your experience with him started before mine. When did you first get involved in that program?
I started at Germantown halfway through my ninth grade year. I think it was the first club day, um, that happened while I was there, and I was walking the halls looking for the drama club because I'd done a few plays when I was in middle school, and then, I ran into Ernest Chisholm, the, legendary principal of Germantown,
Yes.
and he, asked me what I was doing, and I said, "I'm looking for the drama club." He's like, and he directed me to Mr. Bluestein. I can't remember, he was very jolly and and jovial and friendly. So yeah, he directed me to Mr. Bluestein, and Mr. Bluestein, and I had a bit of a conversation. Yeah, and I think he just asked me about myself, and then I think he had me meet Miss Savell, and
Music director?
then I auditioned for the first play. It was a little operetta called A Day in the Courtroom, A Night in the Lighthouse, I believe. It was a Gilbert and Sullivan operetta. I don't know that I was familiar with the concept even of an operetta, but that was a really cool and I think somewhat unusual introduction to my school, theater experience there. But I loved it, and then I was hooked. And then we did The Wiz. That was my first big Germantown High School musical. I played various characters in that, like an Emerald City citizen and a munchkin and other things. But that was amazing.
And we, of course, were in Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat together. That was my senior year, your sophomore year, I believe.
Yeah.
And our claim to fame was being 2 of the brothers of Joseph himself. I was
Yes.
I was Reuben. Which one were you?
Judah.
Judah, that's right, that's right. A couple of years ago, actually during COVID, I went back and 'cause since we were all just kinda hanging out at home, I decided to reach out to some of our classmates on stage and backstage to see if they would self-interview and do this sort of documentary remembering those days, and surprisingly, almost 20 people responded and did so, including you, so thank you for that.
By the way, that was a great little doc you made. That was fantastic, and so
Oh,
cool to
thank
see all these people that, um, I hadn't seen their visage in so long and heard from them. And then, yeah, Joseph came along, auditioned for that, and got the part of Judah, and sort of discovered that, I could kind of dance. I had some fluidity of movement. I'm not a great dancer, but um, and yeah, but that was fantastic. It was really fun to do, and then very exciting that when we got to perform um, down
Memphis in May.
Tomley Park, I think, and, yeah, for Memphis in May, that was like, with this very big crowd in front of us and just standing at the edge of this pretty tiny stage with a microphone and, it just felt like being a rock star for a minute. That was really cool. And then, of
That
course, getting to go to Muncie, Indiana was very special.
Yeah, it was the International Thespian Conference there, and I know that Ball State University, which I believe is David Letterman's alma mater, we
Yeah,
performed at this huge, beautiful stage. I mean, we had our stage at Germantown was pretty nice, and then, it's funny when you're talking about Tom Lee Park and Memphis in May, the stage was about half the size of that, which we had to scale back and try not to fall off the edge of it. But then in Muncie at Ball State, it's this massive theater that I think serves the region, but I wanna say well, I think that the theater is like a full-size, like, Broadway-size theater, and we had to scale out our set to fill it out and
yeah.
even change our expert dancing, to fill the space.
For some reason, I mostly have a memory of being in the audience when we were holding the ribbon, the colors, many colors ribbons, um, and singing and just, you know, feeling this enormous crowd. And yeah, it was pretty thrilling, and we were the opening night performance of the International Thespian Festival. Uh, an International Thespian, is that right?
That's
International
your conference, I think they call
Conference,
it. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
that's the correct word. Thank you. We were big shots.
We were. Oh, yes, we were in Joseph.
Yeah, that's right.
I wanna jump ahead a little bit with the, because again, Frank Bluestein was our, teacher, and he's done a lot of amazing things. He was beyond just a theater teacher. I mean, he started the cable TV studio the summer before my senior year. Back in the days when every high school didn't have a TV station, I mean, we had, really professional equipment. We had access to 4 different cameras. We could do live remotes. We had a weekly news show, and now they compete with smaller market TV stations, but back in the day, we were doing some cool stuff. And, but I wanted to jump ahead because we're gonna get to SNL. One of the things that recurred to me, and I could be totally out of line, tell me this, but as after I graduated, you did a show called Greater Tuna with our friend, Dan McCleary. It seemed to me because that show, for those who aren't familiar, involves a lot of costume changes. It's basically 2 guys that play all these different parts.
10 characters each, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about that experience?
Yeah, I mean, it was quite a play for 2 high school guys to do, playing, adults, kids, boys, girls, men, women, even some animal sound effects from backstage. Uh, but yeah, it was a really great thing to do, and, yeah, I just think it also made me feel like I could be legitimately funny on stage with this piece that was really well written and funny. And getting to do it with Dan was pretty great. And we went to the was it the Tennessee State speech tournament or something and won first place. I guess we did a one act version of it. I don't think we did the whole thing. I think you compress it and did that, and that was pretty great. Dan won Best Actor, deservedly. And yeah, it definitely made me think, oh, okay, okay, this comedy on stage. I think there was something in there that clicked.
So, I wanna borrow from another podcast. Anson Mount, who plays Captain Pike on Star Trek Strange New Worlds, he and a longtime friend of his co-host that one.
One of the things they do, it's called scroll to the bottom.
Scrolling all the way down to your IMDb, I saw your first IMDb credit was Hope and Gloria. I think, was that your first sitcom?
It was, absolutely, yeah.
What do you remember about being on set for that?
Um, well, I got the job because Tony Sepulveda, who's a very big casting director, I'm not sure, I think he's the head of Warner Brothers Casting now. I'm not sure, but he was a important casting director even back then, and so he brought me in. I was in the Sunday show, and he had me come in to audition for this part on Hope and Gloria, and happily I got it. And doing it, I just remember feeling like, okay, this is working. I felt like what I was doing was playing, and getting a good response. I remember this actor Enrico Colantoni, who has been in a million things. He was one of the cast members. And I was walking into the studio at the start of one of the days, and he was sitting out on one of the sets, just like cross-legged and just sort of meditating, just calmly. And he was so kind because I kind of asked him about her. I don't know. I started to engage with him, and he was just, could have been a dick about it. He's like, leave me alone. I'm doing this. But he was the opposite. He was just so generous and kind and, sort of told me what he was doing. And I don't know. That just always stuck with me. And then I hadn't seen him in many, many years. And then I ran into him at Comicon a few years ago. And we brought up that moment, and he totally remembered it. And, it was very cool. He was there for the Veronica Mars reboot or movie or something, I think. Yeah.
Okay. He, of course, bridging into another famous friend of ours, Missy Pyle, kind of got
Oh,
noticed
yeah,
in
that's right.
Galaxy Quest, which
That's
he
right.
was one of the leads of one of the Thermians. I believe he was the lead Thermian. Is that the guy? Is that the
Yeah,
actor
yeah,
you're talking?
yeah. You're exactly right. You're absolutely right.
Thanks, brought to you in part by the Northridge earthquake on January 17th, 1994. I became homeless after that quake because my apartment uh, was yellow tagged, which meant that I was living on the kind of on the edge of Studio City and Sherman Oaks. So the building didn't fall down, but it twisted by about a foot and a half on either side. So we got yellow tagged, which meant that we had 24 hours to get out. But one of the fun little name dropping moments was I knew that there was an actress who lived in my building who apparently had gone to high school with Valerie Bertinelli. And so Valerie showed up with her then husband, Eddie Van Halen, to help their friend move out. So I look up and I see as my couple of friends are helping me get out of there fast. And I look up and there's Valerie Bertinelli and there's Eddie Van Halen with a Van Halen t-shirt on carrying boxes. So
Just so
that's
we knew who he was.
just to make sure, right? But I remember calling you because I believe your lease was about to run out, and I said, "Hey, you want a room together?" And you're like, "Yeah, okay." And so
Yeah,
we lived in Studio City across from the Studio City Golf Tennis complex
yeah. I guess that's
on
right.
Whitsett there
What's it? Yeah.
from 94 to 96. In that 2-year period between 94 and 96, a lot of things happened. You were in the Groundlings. Tell me about the Groundlings because do you try out for it, and then what are the different levels?
Yeah, yeah. You audition to get into basic. I mean, I have to give the caveat that this is how it was when I was there. Groundlings has grown and expanded and has evolved. So I'm not sure exactly what the track is now, but I think it's somewhat similar. So yeah, you audition and they would let you in. It might be a little more restrictive now, actually, just because there's so many people trying to get in there. So I think they have raised the bar.
Is
Um,
that like taking classes then for improv? Is that what that first leg is?
Yeah, the first basic is doing improv, and just learning the basics of improv and how to do it better. And then the second level is intermediate, it's more improv. And then with the third level, which is called lab or was called lab, you start writing and you write monologues and scenes, and then you do a single show at the end of that, whatever the time period is, 12 weeks, and that gets seen by other company members, people in the main company. Um, and then based on that and the advice they give to your teacher, you hopefully get moved into the advanced class, which is the next one. And then you do two shows, more writing and all this stuff, which also include improv. If you're deemed worthy, you get to go into the Sunday show, which is like the farm team, and then you do that for 6 months to a year to I mean, back when I was there, I think, some people even did it for longer, hoping that you can get bumped into the main company, which after I don't know, I think I was in the Sunday show for a year, maybe a year and a half, and then I got very happily moved into the main company.
We were roomies right during that time, so it was fun, for me as just the dude that lived down the hall, to see you, get into that world, and you had some pretty other famous folks around you. I know Jennifer Coolidge was there, and who were some of the other folks?
Yeah, well, the Mike McDonald was there, Anna Gasteyer was there with me, and then Will Ferrell, Sherry O'Terry, and Chris Kattan were just like in a class above me, or like they were in the main show before I got in, but I knew them from just being around. So it was very thrilling when the three of them got on SNL because they were the first ones to get in the cast since maybe Phil Hartman.
Hmm.
So I remember watching in the back office on the TV they had back there between scenes. We were doing a show, but between scenes, we'd go back there and watch SNL for their debut show. It was very exciting.
I'm gonna jump around, and I apologize. This will not I mean, I do
You
have
re
structured
you
questions
really
here,
should
but
apologize because the jumping around is very confusing to me, Jim.
what was the date of your first audition for SNL?
Well, I got
Eight
on the show in the fall of '98,
Right.
so I guess it would have been February, March, April, I'm guessing. I
And
don't
was that while you were in the main company? Did that one segue into the other? Is that how that connection happened?
Yeah, 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 they had sent out talent scouts, and they had asked for tape, from my agent one time prior. It was the round when they hired Anna, and, I knew that that was happening and tape was getting sent in, and then I didn't get it, and I just thought, "Oh, well, that was my SNL shot." Hopefully I'll keep getting to do sitcoms, and then unbeknownst to me, they had come around again, and nobody told me, which was fantastic, and had asked for tape again from my agent. They sent more, and then from that, they flew me to New York to audition. It was great because I just did the one audition. It went well. They asked me to stay around an extra day, which I took as a good sign to meet, you know, the head writers and producers and people and other writers and Fred Wolf, who had been the head writer of the show the season prior, came up to me after the audition and just was like so effusive and so kind and just told me what a great audition it was. Of course, that makes you feel good and feel like, okay, maybe I got a shot at this. And not to put down Mad TV, but I auditioned like at least twice, if not three times for Mad. Never got it. Um, so it was it was great relief to just do the one audition for SNL and get the job.
And that's where your fellow alum, Michael McDonald, went. He was one of the main players on Mad, right?
That's exactly right. Yeah. Mike was and I were in the Groundlings together and yeah, Mike I remember seeing him in shows before I was in shows, like when I was taking classes and that guy made me laugh so hard. So funny. He's more in the directing side of the world now and has done very well for himself there. But yeah, we auditioned for SNL the same day and
Oh, wow. Oh.
stayed in a hotel room next to each other. And
Mhm.
we do our pieces for each other over and over and deliberately not laugh at each other because we were told to not expect laughter. And it was incredibly helpful, because
Oh.
usually when you do comedy, you're expecting laughter or it's somewhere in there. And so to do it for each other and not laugh was fantastic. It was a great sort of strategy, I think.
So when you're in the studio, right? Aren't you in the
Uh-huh.
actual studio where the show is done when you're
Yeah.
auditioning?
You do it on a home base there where the host does the monologue, and there's like one camera on you, and then there are people sort of sitting out in the dark. Not a ton of people, but you can't really see them. You can't see who's out there. And then the feed from the camera is going to the offices, all the SNL offices and all that stuff. And yeah, it's just like a little one person show, and you hope you can get through it and not screw it up. And
So
thankfully.
flashing ahead a little bit, you've gotten SNL and it's your first show. Do you remember that moment of going live, for the first time to the world? Who was the host of that show? 'Cause I should know that.
You really should, Jim. You should have my career memorized. It was Cameron Diaz and,
Okay.
Smashing Pumpkins were the musical guests. It was a pretty cool, first show to have. I remember standing on the side, getting ready to go on to this sketch called Oprah 2000, which was the cold open, and it was an imagining this was in '98, and everything had just gone on with the Monica Lewinsky scandal. So it was an imagining of where everybody would be in 2 more years, and they were on Oprah together, and I think Molly was playing Monica Lewinsky, we had John Goodman playing Linda Tripp. I'm trying to think, was Tim Meadows playing Oprah? Maybe, I'm not sure. But yeah, it was this cool cast, and I remember having the feeling standing over there waiting to go on. I played Kenneth Starr and thinking, yeah, I can do this, because I had this great combination of doing theater stuff, live theater, and then doing enough sitcoms and things. So it felt like a, sort of good experience learning for that and preparing for that. And
Were you nervous? Were you terrified when you're about to
no,
go live, or how did you feel?
I wasn't terrified. I was certainly nervous, but the feeling I'm describing is me being like, yeah, I can do this. I can handle this. I don't because I don't like to work from nerves, it is not helpful to me. And so, but yeah, I was, I guess what I'm saying is I had done enough up to that point to feel prepared, to feel prepared for that moment, which was a great feeling, It wasn't just
Yeah.
like, oh my God, what do I do?
Yeah, yeah. So that was in the fall of '98. Flash forward to May of '99, our friend John Kosky and I came to see you for what was our first SNL Live, and Cuba Gooding Jr. was the host.
Okay.
Ricky Martin was the musical guest,
Okay.
and Monica Lewinsky was the surprise guest on the
Oh,
show
look
that
at
night.
that.
And, it was funny because we had made arrangements, and I worked at NBC at the time in the promotion department, and I had called my little, connections, and you firmed it up to make sure that we would get in there. And I remember before we left, you said, "Let me just give you the number of my dressing room in case there's a problem. It'll be fine." And so I was like, "Okay, great." So we're there, and there's this hallway that you wait. I don't know if it's still this way, but at the time, you would wait in this long hallway,
Mhm.
and they would let groups of people here, first 20 people, next 20 people to load up the studio. And then Chevy Chase comes in. Chevy Chase followed by literally about 25 people, I am not exaggerating, and we were all just standing there waiting to get into our seats. He was sort of egging us like, "Come on, guys. Oh, there's some more. Come on in." He's let his friends, and we were like, "Oh, shit. We're not gonna get in. We're not gonna get in." And sure enough, 5 people ahead of us, the NBC pages came in. "Sorry, guys. We're all loaded up. Thanks for coming." So I pulled the page aside. I said, "Hey, I work at NBC also, I'm here with my buddy John. We both went to high school with Chris Parnell," and they're like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah, whatever. Yeah, you can't go in." And I'm like, "Okay, well, here is Chris's dressing room. Please call this number." And he didn't want to do it. He's like, "Yeah." I said, "Please just call the number." Molly Shannon came out. Apparently, she got the word that your friends were there, and she came out and she goes, "Jim and John, it's so nice to meet you guys. Yeah, come on in." And so she sort of took the baton from the page and brought us back. And was very just so nice. "Oh, you went to high school together? That's so wonderful. I got friends too from way back then." She just could not have been sweeter.
She's
And
amazing. She's
made what
amazing.
was a potentially stressful situation into something just really nice and genuine and kind. It was the first chance to get to see that insane scene transition that you guys do. It was just fascinating to see how lickety split fast you guys would move from one setup to the next.
Well, we as the cast don't have too much to do other than just stand there and let our dresser or multiple dressers change us. Everybody else is really working their asses off. Yeah, I mean, it's an incredible machine, really, because many of the people there have been there for so long, some since the beginning. It's a very impressive crew. It's pretty amazing, and I think most people, when they see the show for the first time, are like, "Holy shit! Wow, it's really something." It's really something.
There's a real energy, that must have been pretty addicting to be there in that time, and how did that feel just week to week of that experience?
One of the main memories I have of the excitement of being out there was when Val Kilmer hosted, the late, great, amazing Val Kilmer. And U2 was the musical guest. And Bono, during one of the performances, just walked off the stage and started walking around the studio. And I would always go out on the floor if I could, if I had time, if I wasn't doing a big change, makeup, prosthetics, to watch the musical act. And so to be out there on the floor, seeing Bono go around the studio and then the camera crew and the lighting folks, everybody scrambling to make the coverage happen to keep him lit and, to keep him on camera in as smooth and seamless a way as possible. Because it was totally unplanned. I mean, nobody knew that was coming.
That
So,
was my next question. It sounded like okay, it was in the moment, huh?
yeah, it was pretty cool rock and roll moment.
Yeah, I'm sure everybody asks you, "What's your favorite sketch?" And I think I know the answer, but, I wanna talk about more Cowbell.
The typical sketch beginning, Will Ferrell wrote it. It was called Recording Studio. Um, Obviously, Christopher Walken was the host, and I wish I remembered more about it. I don't remember reading it at the table, but I think it went well, obviously, and then we did it at Dress.
Did he write it for, Christopher Walken? Was it a sketch that predated that?
I think he had written it maybe for Norm Macdonald. So sometimes you'll do that. You'll bring a sketch at the table and maybe it gets picked for Dress, maybe it doesn't, but if it doesn't make it on the air and you feel like it was a solid sketch and another host comes along and say, "Oh, you know who might be good for that part? Christopher Walken." And obviously he was brilliant.
Everybody was amazing in it, but he was just I don't know how you guys kept it together without laughing. You especially managed to what was your nickname? Was it the Iceman for never breaking?
Yeah, that's what the Iceman, I think, came to stand for because I didn't break. Colin Quinn saw me standing over on the side getting ready to make my entrance during that Oprah 2000 cold open and just saw that I wasn't nervous or any signs of anxiety, and he said to somebody like, "Oh, I guess like the Iceman," or
I
the Iceman.
recall one sketch though, that I think that Will Ferrell did break you a little bit,
Oh,
where
yeah?
he played it was the sketch was the idea that there was an actual mascot for TGI Fridays, and he's, "I'm TGI Friday." Feel like he came as close to getting you to laugh, and do you remember that sketch?
Um, yeah, the reason you can't find it is because I threatened people to never air it because it showed me almost breaking. So I said, "Lauren, if you show this, there's gonna be a price to pay."
You did a lot of sitcoms on NBC as your career was coming alive there before you got SNL, and I remember, you were on Seinfeld, yes?
Mhm.
And, NBC executive, I think.
That's right. That's
Yeah.
exactly right.
What were some of the others?
Suddenly Susan with Brooke Shields.
Caroline in the City, did you do one of those?
Caroline in the City. Nick Freno, licensed teacher. Murphy Brown.
Right.
Um,
There was a show called Union Square, Union Station that was
Union
pretty
Square. That's what
funny,
I'm
but
trying to
it
think of.
one of those that just didn't last very long.
Union Square, yeah. Then I did one called Conrad Bloom. I did the pilot, and it turns out I'd kind of forgotten this, but Nadia Dejani, who's an actress, very talented, very funny. She played one of the main characters in the pilot of Conrad Bloom. They recast it. I don't know if she shot it or if she was just at the table read. I honestly can't remember. Sorry, Nadia, because I know you're gonna watch this. Um, uh, but yeah, anyway, we ended up being roommates in New York my first season on SNL. Through a different connection, through mutual friends, she had an extra room in her apartment, her this great condo she had in the West Village, and so we got on the phone together and talked and worked it out, and it was freaking fantastic, and it was such a cool introduction to New York too, because she had all these amazing New York friends, like the Beastie Boys and all these other amazing people that would come around. So that was pretty thrilling. And then they brought me back for Conrad Bloom. I think they were going to make me a recurring character, is what it seemed like, or is what they said. And between the time we shot the pilot and then I did that, I had done my SNL audition and then found out I booked the job.
Well, parallel to your rise to fame, I had a my career was kind of at its apex. I was doing promos for ER, which was like that was the big deal in what I do for a living, doing promos. So for like 4 solid years, I was almost nothing but ER, which was a pretty great show. So it was fun to be feeling like you and I were NBC buds on opposite coasts. Back to when we were rooming in Studio City, from all the sitcom appearances, I remember what your day job was, and then you got this amazing first feature, I believe, right? Where your character was closely related to your day job.
Yeah, yeah. I was working at FAO Schwarz Toy Store in the Beverly Center, and somewhere in there was an audition for Jingle All the Way with Arnold Schwarzenegger and Sinbad, and I'm playing a, a toy store salesman. And basically, the thing I think that sold it for me, that got me the job, was just my laughing, because you had to laugh really hard at the audition and at Schwarzenegger and all that. So yeah, it was interesting to get to do that, and then also be working at a toy store. But it was cool to get, a role in a fairly big feature like that.
This high school that we went to was famous for having an annual alumni banquet where each year they would honor somebody who had done some great things. And this is right before all of those amazing things had happened. I was working in the promo world, and one of the people I got to work with was the late great Don LaFontaine, who a lot of people associate with "In a World Where Blah Blah Blah." And he had this amazing voice, and so I got to work with Don every day. And so I said, "Hey, we're honoring my friend Chris Parnell at this banquet this year. Would you do a fake movie trailer?" "Yeah, yeah, just write it down about it."
When holiday cheer becomes a cry for help,
Oh, excuse me. Yes?
he is the one who brings order to chaos.
Turboman's only the hottest selling Christmas toy ever.
From the director of Nerds, Greater Tuna, and the 50th annual Junior Miss Pageant,
Yes, you Christmas spirit.
Ephraim Frank Bluestein presents the superhero who does all his own stunts, Chris Parnell, as you've never seen him, with Bobby Watson, and introducing Arnold Schwarzenegger in The Toy Master, a PPP original coming soon to a theater near you.
The thing that I didn't know was to save my best laughs for my close-up. As they start wide and sort of tend to move into 2 shots and 3 shots and close-ups and all that. So by the time we finally got to my close-up of me laughing in Schwarzenegger's face, I was like, I had so little laughing energy left. It was so hard to get it out. And I just thought, thanks, director, for maybe telling me to save some for the close-up. I guess maybe he thought I knew what I was doing. I did not.
I believe also the late great Phil Hartman was a part of that movie, wasn't he?
He was. I got to see him perform live at the Groundlings in an improv show once, and he was genius. I mean, it made me like appreciate him on a whole other level.
I didn't officially meet him either, but I was at every year the networks and NBC specifically has a thing called the Mondo Shoot, where they have the talent, as many talent as they can get on a Saturday or a Saturday, Sunday to come and be there. So on this stage you go and it's a green screen and they're going to put you in compositing over here. In this stage, it's a white background, white cyc where they're going to shoot photos and the fans blowing and glam shots. And I'm not going to name names here, but there was a very famous sitcom that was on, and a lot of times the promo people will write the sketches, the promos, the concepts of what is shot that weekend. A number of the talent are not big fans of it, but they do it because that's in their contract and and they're doing it. So there was a famous couple who was there, and the woman was like not in the mood for it at all. I was like looking through the scripts. I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that. And then the guy said, "Wait a minute, hang on. I mean, look. There's a couple here. Look at this one. This is pretty good. This is pretty good." And she's okay, all right. And so they begrudgingly she went and did it. In the meantime, 15 feet away, John Lithgow and Phil Hartman were over there, and they were like, "Oh, we could do this. And look, there was the red ball. We could do this." And they're coming over to the directors. "Can we try this? I know you wrote it this way, but can we try that?" And the director's like, "Yeah, sure." So it was such a pleasant surprise that players were not annoyed by the process and wanted to make it better. And just to see that happening with the energy that both of those guys had then, and that always just stuck with me.
Oh, sure, of course, yeah. I mean, and that makes sense for the kind of people they are and were. But I did get to work with John Lithgow on a drunk history,
Oh,
which was pretty cool. Even though we were just mouthing other people's dialogue, but it was he's a pretty obviously legendary, amazing actor and continues to do incredible works.
who does that for you? Who over the years brings you to your A game with that level of energy that you play off of?
I mean, the whole SNL gang, for sure. Will Ferrell in particular. Getting to do Walk Hard with Tim Meadows, that was pretty great because that's when we kind of got to be more buds, was doing Walk Hard because he was, I think we only overlapped by 1 season, maybe 2 at SNL. He'd been there so long already. I guess Will would have to be one of the main ones, but I love working with Tim too. I mean, I love working with all of them.
We were having lunch in Toluca Lake one time, and Conan O'Brien walks by, "Hey, I know you." And you're like, "Hey, I know you." And so there's that. And he's like, "Hi, I'm Conan." I'm like, "I know, I'm Jim."
Yeah.
And but another time it was you had taken me to craft a swanky restaurant in Century City, and we're sitting there, and each booth has these kind of veneers around it where you can kinda see who's sitting over there, but not quite, and we were sitting there, and I'm like, "Hey, Adam Sandler is in the next booth over there." They're like, "Oh, okay, wow." You had just recorded your first voiceover for Hotel Transylvania,
Oh, okay.
because when he and his wife got up and walked right past us, he's like, "Hey," he said, "Hey, that you sound really great in the movie, thanks for it." And you guys shook hands, and again, he was like, "Hi, I'm Adam. Hey, I'm Jim." So that was always fun. Tell me about that how was it working with Sandler?
Only time I've gotten to work with Adam Sandler is, on The Ridiculous Six, this Netflix movie that he made, and, he didn't direct it, but he, was the main character and had a big hand in the direction of it too. So yeah, I got a part in that, and, I remember him, like, really trying to help me get the best performance out, that I could in one scene where I was supposed to be more of a heavy, and I really appreciated it. I was like, "Oh, yeah, he's really trying to help get the best out of me for this moment." But yeah, he's such a lovely guy, and, I got to see him most recently at the SNL 50th concert and all of that. I think, in the beginning, when I was, more annoyed by people coming up, I think it probably had something to do with me not accepting my own bit of celebrity, it was just like, "Yeah, I'm not a big deal, you don't need thanks," but, just like I hadn't accepted what was happening, and I didn't feel like I was deserving of that. As I went along, I think, you just get used to it, and you're like, "Yeah, I mean, people are being nice," you just, have to appreciate that and feel like, yeah, okay, if this is how they feel, then I am worthy of getting that. The way that manifests itself now in the biggest way is going to these Comic-Con conventions, these not just the big San Diego and New York Comic-Cons, but all the cons that are constantly happening all over the country and the world. They're paying to get your signature and a photo with you, maybe. Most of them are just so effusive and kind and just they're it's like they're telling you how much they love your work. It's very gratifying. It's very, makes you feel good.
In my side of television, I produced some features on different things. And one time I got to do one on a Star Trek convention when I was in Pennsylvania working for KDKA in Pittsburgh. Two of the guests at that convention I went to were Catherine Hicks, who played the whale scientist in Star Trek 4, and also Colin Meaney, who played Chief O'Brien on Next Generation. And I talked to both of them about that sort of moment where people excite, especially in the Trekkie world of, it's kind of like Galaxy Quest, the character that Justin.
Justin Long.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
The excitement of the Trekkies have that the warp drive is real, how do the transporters work and all that kind of thing, and it was fun to talk to those 2 about that, and, especially Colin Meaney because he's like, "Well, these are excited people, and we actually have a thing called Star Trek School where we go, and they sort of brief us on how to interact with fans in a kind way, but to set proper boundaries too."
Oh, wow.
But I thought of you when I was doing those interviews and how but Catherine Hicks, um what a ridiculous time that I'm getting emotional about this, but Catherine Hicks had this beautiful she said, I'm new to this Star Trek world, and I remember when I was a kid growing up, it seemed like all of the smart kids were watching Star Trek, and I didn't really understand it or pay that much attention to it, but when I did, and I was in this film, and since then, when she was going to conventions at that time too, and signing autographs and taking pictures, she says, "I felt like, wow, I've been invited into this whole world, and these people are so interested in my career and excited about my career in a way." So it does she says, "I was a little taken aback by it, but at the same time, I just appreciate" what you were just saying in a lot of ways too, that there's, appreciating that they are appreciating you.
Yeah. Well, and also, there's nothing wrong with getting emotional about it. I started to get emotional when you were telling me about Molly coming and being so kind to you and John. I was just like, oh, that woman is just, oh, she's a very special lady and obviously brilliant and hilarious. I
Yeah.
ran into, to name drop a little, Dermot Mulroney, who I know, and I saw him at the first con that I did, and he's like, "Oh, you're gonna love it. You're gonna love it. It's great." And he was right. It was great. It was just like, it was like, "Oh yeah." Dermot will try.
Voiceover animation is something that's been a huge part of your career between Archer and American Dad and Rick and Morty, of course. Whenever I am meeting somebody new and I mention that you and I are friends, that's always oh, Rick and Morty, SNL too. But Rick and Morty is the universal icebreaker in talking about Chris Parnell. I don't know exactly when you did your first voice animation show, but how was that translating your comedy into a show where you're sitting oftentimes, I guess, in a little recording booth without I mean, you're on the phone, right? Well, tell me about that. What is it like translating comedy into that environment?
Well, I mean, it kind of has to be in the script. It has to be on the page. It's freeing, very freeing in the sense that it doesn't matter what you're doing physically with your face or your body or your arms, and you can just pour all of your concentration and your energy into your voice. Um, and I guess I've spoken about this before. The biggest challenge is, and I think I'm pretty good about it now, is to not phone it in. It's like you can listen to yourself and you can do one line, so many different ways in quick succession, depending on how long the line is. But it's about acting it well, and trying to be in the moment with it and being present in your mind in this, animated scene. And not that I'm necessarily picturing the animation, but yeah, it's just trying to be present and act it well and do justice to the writing. And then the comedy part of it is hard sometimes because it's like I can do my best to act it well, but also like, is there a way to make it funnier? And and again, it's generally on the page there, especially with Rick and Morty and Archer and well, American Dad, all of them. But having this other eye to maybe there's a funnier way to do this. And sometimes it's just about finding um, a more honest way of doing it. And sometimes that will bring the comedy in and of itself because it just rings truer. I just got to see 2 episodes of season 8. It was very exciting to get to see it on a big screen. We saw it at Vidiot's in Eagle Rock, which for those who don't know is like a video store, but they also have a big theater or decent sized theater. And a lot of special kind of events and screenings happen there.
So I think the episode that you did for Love, Death, and Robots just dropped, which is called The Other Large Thing. Can you talk about that?
I was just so blown away by the animation I mean, all of it is so amazing, but for my segment and my character, and it's my voice, or at least at the top of this particular trailer, playing the voice of this cat. And I'm excited to see it. I haven't seen it. I'm a little nervous because I just hope, like, God, I hope I did it justice. I mean, it's like when you see how much work and brilliance has gone into animating something. I mean, it was, obviously well written to begin with, but then you do your part. I think I've done Love, Death, and Robots. I don't know if that was the second or third time I've done it, but it's like you get this thing and you're kind of not thinking of it in the context of how good it's going to be, and you do the best you can, and then to see the animation, I was like, oh wow, this is some high level stuff, and I just hope I did it justice.
Well, then it's for people who haven't seen it. It's an anthology series with it's almost all sci-fi bent. In fact, I would say it's kind of a combination of Twilight Zone meets Black Mirror, but they're very dark. But the animation styles are very unique to each episode. The other part of the fun was, you probably know this, is that John Oliver plays the character that your character is playing off of, and
Yeah,
so I watched it the first time, I'm like, "Man, that voice sounds familiar," and then I IMDb'd it, it's like, "Oh, yeah."
yeah,
So it's a really fun episode. One of the other characters is Fred Tatasciore. He's from, Star Trek Lower Decks. He's one of the main characters there, and he's one of the humans in the scene. So it's a really fun episode, and, I just can't wait for you to see it, and we'll talk about that.
yeah. No, Fred. I didn't know that. I didn't know that Fred did that. He's amazing. He's an amazing voiceover actor. He does so much stuff. I got to work with him when I did the Mr. Peabody and Sherman show. The cool thing about that was we did record it as an ensemble, which is unusual. But
Mm.
these incredible voice actors would come in and do parts, and that was the way I got to meet a lot of these folks like Fred and D. Bradley Baker, um, who otherwise I just kind of know who they are, or know their names. But it was that was one of the great gifts of doing Peabody and Sherman, was getting to meet these amazing voice actors.
My youngest, Nick, was a huge fan of that show, so it was fun to and now is a huge fan of, Love, Death, and Robots, so
Oh,
I
cool.
just told him about your latest appearance, and he's like, "Oh my gosh, I didn't know that dropped yet."
Oh,
But he loved, Mr. Peabody and, that show. That's again, our friendship of sitting there and watching listening to my high school friend coming from the TV and entertaining my child, so thank you for that.
of course, yeah. I'm so glad Nick enjoyed it so much.
So in this process of acting and making an amazing career out of it in animation, in live, in even drama as well, how have you, Chris Parnell, evolved in that process? Where were you at the beginning of that journey, and where would you say you are today?
I'm a lot more experienced, obviously, than when I started. I have a better idea of what I'm doing, even though I still have to try to remember to approach it with, yeah, I guess the beginner's mind, as they say, somewhat. Um, in terms of just not forgetting to be a good actor, really listening to the other character, and really talking to the other character, connecting with them, which, for voiceover, a lot of times it's just over Zoom, especially since the pandemic. The one good thing about doing it with Zoom, it's like it's much more intimate in a way because their faces are sometimes right there on an iPad next to you and they can see you. And so it feels a lot more intimate. Most of the time when we work in Morty, Scott Martyr, who is the showrunner and runs the sessions, he and one of the producers, Suzanne Belk, are on the TV monitor that's up there, and then there's a camera on me. But so Scott will read scenes back and forth with me, which makes a big difference to hear that other person's voice.
Yeah.
Long-winded answer to your question. Let's see. I'm more confident than I used to be. A lot of it is, uh, yeah, I've been in therapy for a long time, which has helped a lot and continuing to help, me just understand myself better and basically not be so hard on myself.
How has being a parent played into your career? How do you think about the work that you're doing, based on your boys?
Well, I guess it mainly comes into play when I'm playing a dad like Jerry. I had to do a speech that was emotional and it involved sort of an alternate Jerry in an alternate situation. But one of my first memories of being a dad was this awareness that, you love this person so much. And then you also, was accompanied by this fear that like, oh God, what if something happens to them?
Mm.
It's just this beauty and then this terror and trying to just hold on to the goodness of it and not letting the fear of something horrible that will hopefully never happen come in. And I'm able to pull on some of that, particularly if it's an emotional scene.
What performances have your kids? Because obviously there's some that they probably aren't allowed to watch yet, but, what are some of them that you've gotten to share with them?
um Nature Cat, they've seen a fair bit of Nature Cat. Damien's too old for it now. Harry will still watch it occasionally. I think Damien watched a few Peabody and Shermans back when he was younger. I think Damien's probably, in a couple of years anyway, will probably be ready to watch Rick and Morty if he wants to. I know he's got his buddies who do, and one of his friends from school came up to me at one of their baseball games and said, "Hey, I just started watching Rick and Morty. You're awesome, man," and gave me a fist bump.
Your dad was also in broadcasting, and from his own, corner, we both lost our dads in the last, 2 years. Do you feel like he played a role in ushering you into broadcasting and what you, turned out to do?
He did, yeah. I mean, just by his presence and by what he did for a living and growing up listening to his voice, I think that affected me certainly. I am adopted, but somehow I ended up, thankfully, with a pretty good voice, and his was even more sonorous and beautiful than mine. Uh, but yeah, so he was a disc jockey, I think, when I was very little, and then he moved into being a program director, and then he started his own recording studio with a partner of his, and So when he needed the voice of a kid for a commercial and a spot that they were producing, he would often use me or my sister. So that was kind of my introduction to performing. And I don't know that when I did it, I was like, oh, this is what I want to do. I don't think that's what happened. But I remember when I got very serious in high school about wanting to be an actor. It was, it had to do with Mr. Bluestein a lot because he said, you know what, you can really do this, if you want to, man. You can do this. You can be like Al Pacino. I think he might have been overstating things. I don't think I'll ever be at Mr. Pacino's level, but it was very encouraging, and he encouraged me to audition for North Carolina School of the Arts, which I did. So when I made it clear to my parents that this is what I really wanted to do, they felt an obligation to sort of like try to present me with the reality of the business in as much as they knew it, which mainly came from my dad knowing some Memphis actors who'd come out to LA and, done a fair bit of work and their experience. So, they felt the need to like say, it's really hard, are you sure this is what you want to do? And when they saw that I was serious and really cared about it, and I think that, they saw the plays, so I think they they realized that I wasn't just a pie in the sky guy. It's like, oh, the kid's got some talent, and then they were very supportive. They were always supportive of it. So yeah, but yeah, definitely an influence, and also just, I mean, the biggest influence was just the person that he was. Just his kindness and calmness and his just loveliness. He was just a sweet man. Everybody liked my dad, and
He was always wonderful to me. I did not know your dad that well, but every time I saw him, he was always so kind. He's one of those people who finds you and makes you feel like you're the most special person in the room, and your dad had that quality.
he was a pretty special guy and such an amazing role model. You know, I I don't have all of his best qualities for sure, but I have some of them, and I've learned a lot of them from him.
I have a, lightning round for you.
Okay,
Are you ready for this?
sure.
Burger or pizza?
Pizza.
One of my favorite memories with you is watching The Fifth Element together, which I think just celebrated its 28th anniversary. We were at the Cinerama Dome together. What's your favorite sci-fi show, and ideally one that maybe you wanna be in?
Well, favorite sci-fi movie would probably have to be the David Lynch Dune. Um, I mean, it definitely would. I love that movie so much. No, I quite enjoyed the Denis Villeneuve Dunes as well. Um, those were gorgeous and fantastic. And I just got to meet Jason Momoa at one of the
Oh.
SNL 50th things, which was
Oh, okay.
pretty cool. Yeah. Uh,
He was terrific in Dune, yeah.
yeah, he was. Yes, he was. So yeah, I would say Dune. And then TV show wise, I mean, I got to be on a very cool one, Fallout. Playing Overseer Ben. That was
You had an eye in the middle of your forehead.
Yeah, it was a Cyclops. The Last of Us is amazing, which I'm
Mm,
completely behind on season two. I have not
mm,
started season two.
okay.
Um, but yeah, I love sci-fi, as you know.
What is the top artist on your playlist?
And these days, um, well, I mean, the one I go back to a lot is Lana Del Rey. I listen to Lana Del Rey. Her music is kind of like an LA soundtrack for me. It just feels so LA, and it's just gorgeous, and I really love that. But I also listen to, I mean, so much. Bat for Lashes, I really love. I really love her.
What is your hidden talent?
I can I can move better than I look like I could, though I'm not a great dancer, but I do have some sense of that. I think I'm pretty talentless beyond what you can see right on the screen.
Which celebrity were you surprised to learn is a fan of yours?
Hmm. I got to do a couple of segments for John Oliver for Last Week Tonight. Um, and well, while I don't think I've ever even spoken to John, but I took his feedback from what I did. I heard, through a note he wrote and stuff. That was very flattering because he's fantastic. I think so much of him. Yeah, I don't know. Not too many other celebrities are, you know, you run into people, especially these Comic Cons, and be like, "Hey, man, you're so great," and you'll get that back, which is sweet.
One of my little moments in flying back and forth to Memphis back in the days when you could bump up to first class for $100, I sat next to Holly Hunter on the plane when she was flying there to go to Mississippi to shoot Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? And we didn't talk a lot. She was mostly reading the script on the flight out there.
Yeah.
But we had a lovely little conversation. Who were you sort of starstruck by, whether you work with them or not?
I mean, I got to meet Rachel McAdams once at a restaurant here. I was there actually with Natasha, my now wife, when we were dating, and she was sitting at this restaurant with her sister, small restaurant in Silver Lake, and she said, "You should go say something to her." So I went up and introduced myself and told her about, I was one of the guys in Lazy Sunday, and we mentioned you and Ryan Gosling and all this, and she was very sweet. So that was very cool. But here's one. Brooke Shields. Brooke Shields. Even though I had met her on Suddenly Susan, it was so long ago, and I had such a small part. I didn't even know that I was in a scene with her on that. But she came around to SNL when Ben Stiller was hosting, and she had been working on this movie with him in New York there. And she came in to say hi to him and just see the scene. And she had been working that day, and I think she wanted to have something to drink. So she's like, is there any wine or alcohol or anything around here? It's like, well, I've got some scotch in my office. Would you like to come over there? So I got to walk the lovely and amazing Brooke Shields over to my office that I shared with Will Ferrell and a writer, Jerry Collins.
Who would you love to work with who you haven't yet?
Pedro Pascal is pretty great.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I've gotten to work sort of with Martin Short on SNL, but doing something with him and again, Steve Martin hosted. They're fantastic. Obviously, needless to say, Meryl Streep would be great.
Although you technically were in a movie with her, but you weren't in the same scene.
Which movie was it?
The Laundromat?
Oh, okay, okay, okay. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I've certainly been in movies with people that I haven't never gotten to meet, so it doesn't really count.
What's something that you'd love for people to know about your Memphis hometown that they may not know?
It was a great place to grow up, and I'm going back a week from today to do the Memphis Library Comicon, um, and see a few friends and um, including my sister and her family, and Mr. B. And, so yeah, I'm looking forward to that very much. And Dan, Jennifer Smith. It was a good place to grow up.
Well, man, thank you so much for doing this. I appreciate it. This was fun, and it was fun to hear some stories, even as close as we've been that I had not heard before. So thank you for taking the time out, and would love to do this again, and can't wait to see you again. And please tell everybody in Memphis who you're going to see that I said hi.
I will. It was really fun. Thanks for having me on your podcast.
Well, thanks again, and we'll see you soon.
All right, Jimmy boy.